Hi, this is Chris Kruger. I'm a candidate for state representative in the Illinois 17th District in the Green Party. I wanted to make a short video with my reaction to the Chicago Sun-Times endorsement of the incumbent. And the representative has passed two notable pieces of legislation I wanted to comment briefly on. One is a state law codifying the Roe v. Wade decision. And what this would do for reproductive rights advocates is it would make Roe the law of Illinois. If the United States Supreme Court were to overturn Roe v. Wade, it would in all likelihood revert to the prior law, which would have the states determine individually the contours of the reproductive rights and the decision to terminate pregnancy. That was the state of the law before Roe v. Wade. So by passing this law, assuming the Illinois Supreme Court upholds the law as constitutional, then in all likelihood the United States Supreme Court generally defers to state Supreme Courts in matters of state law. So this is a good thing for reproductive rights advocates, and had I been in the General Assembly, I would have supported this same statute. So that's good. I'm glad that happened. Another law the representative helped to draft and to pass with the help of her colleagues in the General Assembly concerned the guardianship of minor children of refugees, of immigrants being deported, and made it easier for courts to appoint guardians so that minor children could remain in the United States even if their parents were to be deported. That's how I understand the law. This is also a statute that I would support. So I applaud both of those enactments. But there's some other things that I'm more critical of. When we say, what's your deal breaker? We're talking about different things to different persons. To the Republican candidate in this race, there's three candidates: myself, the incumbent, who's a Democrat, and another challenger, who's a Republican. Her deal breaker is Roe. She's a pro-life advocate, and I respect pro-life advocates. I respect them for the commitment and for their good faith belief. I differ with them because I will always uphold a woman's right to control her own body. But I understand the pro-life movement. I don't condemn them as backward, ignorant. So when we talk about deal breakers, and we talk about Roe, we talk about refugees, we talk about taxes. Well, my deal breaker is war. And it may not seem relevant that a candidate for state representative is talking about war, but I'm going to tell you why I think it is relevant. Because when we talk about taxes, and we're trying to pass a progressive tax provision, instead of the regressive tax provision we have now that punishes um, medium and lower income people. When we talk about taxes, we have to remember the same Democratic Party that's in Springfield is the Democratic Party in Washington, D.C. The same Republican Party that's in Springfield is the Republican Party in D.C. Over 40 years since the election of Ronald Reagan, Republican Party has almost unanimously voted to cut the highest marginal tax rates, that's the rates for the wealthiest people in our society, over 6 times. And many Democrats have assisted them. What this has done is it's created a class of the most unequal wealth, unequal distribution of wealth of any society in the history of civilization. And it has led to our political system being dominated by 2 donor managed parties and politicians reduced to spokespersons for their donors. So when we cut marginal tax rates for the wealthiest people 6 times in 40 years, that leaves very little to help out the states when we do that at the federal level. Then add to that the fact that we spend about $1 trillion a year on war and spying, and the State Department, the NSA spying on Americans, and destabilizing governments and imposing economic sanctions on about 30% of the countries in the world. So when you complain about the fair tax, remember where your money is going, and remember it's the same parties that are doing this to you. Your neighborhood school is a battleship. It's being built in Wisconsin, in Marinette, Wisconsin. It costs $490 million. You could do a lot with that. You could do a lot with a Trident submarine. It costs about $1 billion. And we're building them right now. But we don't have money for health care. We don't have money for education. And we have to pass a fair tax so we can tax the incredibly wealthy class that's been created by these cuts, initiated by Republicans usually, but also followed by the Democrats, and the incredible amount of money spent almost unanimously by both parties in Washington, D.C. on our military-industrial establishment. So when we talk about refugees, let's talk about where refugees come from. Refugees come from when we destabilize governments, when we impose economic sanctions on foreign peoples that punish innocent non-combatants, women and children, when we engage in interventions either directly or through proxy. So that's where the money would come if we didn't have to pass the fair tax. When we pass the fair tax, we need to remember the root causes. And when we go to help refugees, we need to remember the root cause. And we can't compartmentalize state government with our national government, as they're both controlled by the same parties and the same donors. If you elect me, I'm going to fight, first of all, against this massive recession that's coming as a result of COVID, and fight for workers, small businesses, students, families. And I can work across the aisle with both parties because of my relative freedom of not being dependent on donor money. I'm only dependent on the donor on the voters. So I asked you to support me and go to KrugerForStateRep.com, volunteer, share this video, and let's shake up what we're doing in Springfield, what we're doing, and reclaim our government for the people. Thank you so much. Bye-bye now.